This is our story about the state that is Italy and the state that Italy is in. Welcome to Beyond Borders. Italy's past goes back thousands of years. Its present is every bit as fascinating.
What is the convenience of that when on the table there are so many other items which are enough?
The government is making a point, isn't it? It's saying...
It's not.
There is a government now in Italy led by Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy, whose emblem is the tricolor flame, a symbol that is inextricably linked to the darkest of times in Italy's recent past, the days of fascism under the dictator Benito Mussolini.
L'Italia continuerà a essere partner affidato.
Fratelli d'Italia and the Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni play down those links. But Italians have opted for a right-wing government. It will be tougher on migration.
They are not coming here to steal the job. They come here to find a island where to live and to stay.
Perché non può essere solo l'Italia ad accogliere tutti i migranti.
Tougher with what it sees as an overburdening European Union, and less likely to give unwavering financial support to Ukraine. Some of the issues we are here to discuss. Well, we were hoping to have with us at this table a member of Fratelli d'Italia, the largest party in the ruling coalition, but she can't make it. There is a vote in Parliament tonight, and, well, I suppose politics are politics. So we have two guests with us. We have a seasoned journalist, and we have a member of Parliament for the Democratic Party. Welcome to you both. Let's talk about migrants. I think it was almost 60,000 in 10 months of last year came to Italian shores. Had the people had enough? Were they saying we need to stop this? Because the policies of the new government are pretty draconian. They're turning people away. France has said it's unacceptable. France has, just the day we're recording this, said we're not going to have 3,500 of your migrants. There's something going wrong there. What were the people of Italy saying about that?
Well, I think there is something that your viewers should know, which is the question is it convenient for this government to behave as it is doing with respect to migrants? Italy has a lot on its table, on our table. We have to negotiate with Europe the new Stability Pact, which for a highly indebted country like us is very important. We have to make sure that we implement a national recovery plan with European money. We have to discuss with Europe our budget law like every year. We need European money for unemployment that is rising because of a result of the rising cost of energy. We need European money and a European energy policy.
Are you suggesting that this government is going to take Italy further away
I'm just saying,
from Europe
I'm just saying,
money's in danger?
I'm saying we have all these items on the table. Why do we need to fight over migrants? When this country, not another country, but this country this year managed to welcome 120,000 Ukrainians, welcoming them in our homes, in our schools, in our offices, with no problem. So we can do it. We can welcome people. We can manage migration. Why do you have to make a row over 243 people with France? What is the convenience of that when on the table there are so many other items which are enough?
The government is making a point, isn't it? It's saying,
it's not,
you talk about 120,000 Ukrainians. I mentioned the 60,000 almost migrants that came to Italian shores in 2021. It's making a point, isn't it, by saying, people, we know you're concerned about this because, well, perhaps they're telling them they're not going to get jobs because of the migrants, but you're concerned about it, and therefore it is an issue with the population, isn't it?
It is an issue with the population, but are you using the concerns of the people to be able to do something about it, or are you just exploiting the concerns of the people to raise up 1 point, 0.5 points in the polls? I think it's a second answer. I don't see how blocking one ship of migrants outside our coast is going to improve at all the situation of the management of migrants in the country. I mean, we welcomed 60,000 coming from the sea, 120,000 coming from Ukraine, which is 200,000. Do you have a real impact if you block 500 migrants out of the coast? No.
Well, that's one small
just
part
put
of
up
it,
a
because
show.
part of the election campaign was support for the war in Ukraine, or not. And when you've got 120,000 migrants that have come to this shore, somebody is going to say, well, hang on, why are we paying for them when we're already hurting with high gas prices, high food prices, etc., etc.?
There isn't, up to now, there hasn't been a conflict. The previous government managed to put 60 billion euros on the table, which is more than any other European country compared to GDP, but Germany, to help families with the cost of energy. So you can do both. We are a big country. We are a generous country. We are a country that has a lot of enthusiasm and energy. And I'm really ashamed of this government that does not recognize all these good signs and qualities of Italy while saying they're a nationalist.
This room is normally full of restaurant customers, lent to us now by Zoe, the owner of Da Lucia, who is finding times are getting tighter. So tell me how the government could help you.
For sure, if I can spend less in taxes, will be easier. Also because you can pay much more the people working for you, so it's an incentivation, like. And but the taxes are really high. For every people I have here.
So for every one person.
Yeah, I spend not real, but almost the double on taxes.
So is it just the fault of the outside world that Italians are hurting when it comes to prices, and that they can't afford food, they can't afford fuel, they can't afford electricity? Is it nothing to do with the government? Because we have this member of parliament saying it's actually very generous, the government of Italy. It has been in the past, but why are people complaining?
I mean, it's hurting, but let's be fair. I mean, I suffer, and I have to blame someone. That's a normal psychological thing, you know, and it's very easy to blame migration and cost of the war in Ukraine. It's costing a lot of money, even though it's not, they don't tell you all the time, you know, it's a bit of a secret, but we know that we're talking billions. So I hear people in the streets. So I agree with you when you say that we can do it, but I'm not sure how much people understand that or can share this feeling, you know.
So what would you say there? Let's say three major concerns are. Should we go back to migration? Should we bring in the cost of living? Should we talk about the war in Ukraine? Would they be the three?
Yes, number one is cost of living, absolutely, no compare. But then the side effects, some people think this is a side effect of the war, of the migration, and all this, and mishandling from the governments.
So what are the major?
I'm talking like giving voice to what I hear in the bar and in the street. I'm not elaborating myself.
How does
I'm
government?
I'm a reporter,
No,
so
no,
I report.
absolutely. I totally understand. You have ears, you have eyes, and you have a pen. What would you say the major issues that have to be addressed immediately, or rather, how would you say they can be addressed immediately?
Well, I would be a politician if I had the answer, but I think the number one thing, I can say it's my personal experience. I got a huge electricity bill that is ruining my budget. I have to really, I wanted to do some things, I'm not going to do them because I have to pay a huge electricity bill, and I even didn't use so much. Now we're going from one room to the other. Switch it off. No, it's becoming funny. It creates like a a little bit of a war atmosphere, you know, like tonight we use candles. We do these things.
Just as you say that, the lights in here go a little bit dim.
That's something we never afford, you know. I'm using now a low level of light in the house. So this is, I think, the main concern. The other thing are side effects.
What would you say the government should do tomorrow?
I say first concern is cost of living, and I think the government should really try to find resources to tackle this, which they're not.
So spend more money?
Yes, but
nobody has any money these days.
No, but I mean, you can tax, for example, the extra profits of energy producing companies. And we're not entirely sure that this government wants to really tax.
Isn't it time to be honest with people rather than say, we're going to give you more money, we can afford it?
Of course, you have to do a policy on energy which includes a premium on saving energy. But I mean, with energy bills that have doubled, in order for them to go back, you would need people to use half or even less the amount they were using before the energy prices increased, which honestly is not just saving, it really is cutting on necessary consumption.
And here we come to another thing, which is spending money, and we've mentioned Ukraine already. People are getting to the end of their tether in some cases and saying we just cannot afford to do this. We have to ask both Ukraine and Russia to make a peace because we as the world cannot afford it. Is this government going to give up on its support of Ukraine? And would you, if you were back in power again as part of a coalition, would you say everything that can be done will be done?
Well, I mean, these hours when we record this, it is hours when Russians are leaving Kherson by themselves. And they're leaving it because the strategy that has been employed since the beginning of the war, which is supporting the Ukrainian army and sanctions and isolating Russia, is paying. So there is nothing worse than in the middle of something to change your tactic that is working. So I wouldn't change anything of what we are doing. I would try to understand how to put more pressure on Russia, including more pressure of the public opinion. I think that in Italy, it's not entirely clear that to get to the peace, you need Russia more than anything else to be committed to peace. Here there is this idea that you have two sides in the conflict, you have to put pressure on both sides. But there is a lot of pressure on Ukrainians already, done by Russians. So I think we should work a lot more with the public opinion to explain to them, look, it's Putin, that Putin can decide to end the war tomorrow. You put pressure on him.
And then, how does the rest of Europe view Italy, the 8th largest economy in the world? Is it nervously looking over its shoulder, wondering what is approaching? Let's talk about the outside world's view of Italy at the moment. I live and work in the United Kingdom, and we've gone through an awful lot of international criticism for the way that our governments have come and gone and the way that the energy crisis has been handled. Unacceptable is the word that France said about Italy and the migrant crisis. There are concerns that Italy won't continue with its support of Ukraine as much as it is doing at the moment. Does it have a problem, this current government, with the European Union and the way that it's viewed?
Well, I think we should stress one thing. This majority is made by three parties. The Brothers of Italy is the main party. Then you have the Northern League and the Berlusconi Forza Italia. They don't have the same approach. I mean, Salvini and the Northern League has been in the past quite close to Putin and Russia. There are connection. Also, the party has a direct connection with the party of Putin.
And Forza Italia and Berlusconi,
Berlusconi
they've been boasting, the two of them, that they're the best friends.
Yeah, they say they exchange wines, best wines and best whatever, I don't know. And so they really love each other. They send love letters. They say, recently, it was amazing. He received a letter full of love from Putin. You know, he was even moved by that. Okay, so it's that
go
creates
back and tell me, you're
confusion.
talking about a fraction. Are you within
It's a
the
fraction,
government?
but it's a fraction. It's a fraction, but it's a fraction that can force the government to do a lot of things, because if they get off, the government folds.
But the European Union's view, if I may come back to that,
Sure.
of Italy at the moment is, how would you characterize it? Dangerous? Foolish? A joke? What?
No, it's more wait and see. It's more wait and see. I think it makes sense. Let's see, because also there are different positions, different things. They have to make sure who is really calling the shots. Then, for the moment, I think, of course, some parties are more worried, but the EU, the Commission, at the moment, I think, is still on the wait-and-see position.
Leah, let me come to you on this one, because you're very big on Europe. You're one of your party's senior representatives when it comes to talking about European affairs. Do you think Europe as a whole, and can we characterize it as a whole? I don't know, but let's say generally, do you think Europe is looking at Italy as a dangerous partner at the moment?
Well, Europe knows that without Italy, lots of things cannot be done, and they're waiting to see. I think
remind us what can't be done.
Many policies in Europe cannot go either good or wrong without Italy. Italy can block a lot of things or can give a big push, like we saw.
So it's a bit tentative. It has to be careful with Italy at the moment because it's worried.
They're waiting to see. I think the biggest contradiction of this government is on their attitude towards Europe, because Meloni and Salvini in the past said a lot of difficult and harsh things on Europe, against Europe. But, I mean, the 2018 government, which was the first populist government that one big European country had in Italy, proved that you cannot govern Italy against Europe. They tried to reshape the international relation of the country with linkages to Russia, linkages to China. They tried to be against Europe, but they didn't manage. They failed. They failed as a government with the relationship with Europe. So I think this government big test will be whether they decide to behave like some force that wants to transform Europe or some force that wants to disrupt Europe. That's the big test, and it's not entirely sure what Meloni is going to do, which is why I was asking you, who is it convenient for to open up a big row on migration with Europe? What happened the day we record this program is that France welcomed 243 migrants on an NGO boat from Libya, but France said, okay, we stop taking part in a shared responsibility.
These were the 3,500 that I mentioned that they'd agreed to take, and they're saying no.
They said no. This is a big lesson for the government. Italy can be a European solution to its own problems, or it can be a big problem for Europe and endanger our own interests.
No time to have a Europe that is arguing amongst itself when all of the problems that we see around the world are affecting each and every one of us.
That's why I think that is in our national interest to be part of European solutions to the world's problem. And I wonder whether this government that fools its mouth with many words on defending the country, defending national interests, whether they will do that or they will fail the country.
There is talk, of course, of migration. We've seen the discontent in our journey across Italy. Do you think it's fair to associate Fratelli d'Italia? I know it's not your party, but is it fair to associate them with the fascist tendencies of Mussolini and his party?
Well, it's never good to speak about who's absent, but I mean, I think your viewers should know that the symbol of Fratelli d'Italia contains a flame, And this flame is represents the flame that burns on Mussolini's grave. And when Liliana Segre, who is a very respected figure, a Holocaust survivor, senator for life, asked Giorgia Meloni to change the symbol, to take away that flame, because it symbolizes everything that fascism has been for this country, including racial laws against Jews. Well, Giorgia Meloni didn't reply to Liliana Segre, to a Holocaust survivor, to a figure that is called, that calls herself a grandmother with a memory. Liliana Segre calls her the national grandmother with a memory. So, I mean, the fact of not responding to this sort of invitations, the fact that they still keep these kind of symbols, not only in their logo, but in general, in some of their houses, in some of their offices, it tells a lot of what their underlying ideology is. And I think that in the end, when you take away what they built over that ideology, when you go to the root, to the core of what this party is, it traces there.
Isn't it time to stop pointing the finger at them and saying that they are the evil party, that they are a fascistic party? Because a lot of people have suggested that the reason that they became the majority party and were able to form a coalition is because parties such as yours did nothing other than say, don't vote in the fascists. Well, and you didn't address the fact that people had real concerns about the cost of living, etc.
I think that there is a failure of opposition. The majority coalition got 12 million votes, and all the other parties in the opposition got 14 million votes. So there has been a failure, which is a shared failure by all parties in opposition, not to be able to unite over a program, over an objective, over a vision of the country.
All you could say was, we don't want you to be the government. What did you say to help solve people's problems?
We did a lot. I don't think we lost the elections because Draghi, who was in government just before Meloni, didn't perform. And I wonder, and I want to see a challenger of the fact that Draghi's government was a good government. It was a government that ended its mandate with a 60% approval. So it's not a problem of how we behaved when we were in government. It was a failure, a political failure that we did not to be able to unite. And Fabio was saying, was tracing back to 100 years ago when fascism got in power. And I mean, this big failure of the opposition is 3 times a failure. Once, it is a failure. Second, we didn't cash in from the good performance of Draghi government. And the third failure is an historical failure, because we didn't learn anything from the past. We cannot say that the Italians didn't learn anything from the past if us as political class, as a ruling class, didn't learn from the past. And in 1922, Mussolini got in power because the opposition was divided and weakened. And again, they got in power 100 years afterwards because we are divided.
I know you won't speak for Fratelli d'Italia in terms of where they stand on that particular platform, but I want to ask, is there a failure there to recognize that the dangers of the past could well be repeated?
I think the Italian democracy it's very strong. I don't see any risk of like a dictatorship or anything like that. I think.
But there is a rise of right-wing parties across Europe. Absolutely,
but I think, especially, I mean, I see, for example, the young people. They are completely different. They live. They don't. For them, certain things are there. They won't be changed. There won't be any law, like any discrimination on sexual habits, on abortion, on civil rights. You know, these are parts of the young generation. I think it would be impossible, whatever means. I mean, it's so established now. It's a new world. We are living in a new world. It's a new Italy. That's why I'm not that worried. Of course, there are worries, but it's a different world.
Listen, thank you very much indeed for coming on. As I did mention, we hope to have a member of parliament, as you are, but from Fratelli d'Italia on the programme. She's been detained, but thank you very much indeed for coming and spending your time with us here.